Hi, I'm Alex Pault, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Today, I wanted to talk about a Chinese watch with a Swiss sole, as it were, and that's the Seagull 1963, a relatively famous watch and one of the short list watches that you would recommend to someone who was getting into watch collecting but didn't want to spend a lot of money. You can get one of these for a few $100s, and it's worth every penny. It's a column wheel, hand-wound chronograph, and we'll talk a little bit more about the history when we flip the camera around to take a closer look. But what I will do is we'll compare it to another column wheel chronograph that I happen to have on hand based on the Valjoux 7750, the Longines triple date moon phase. So let's flip the camera around and take a look at the Seagull 1963, and I'll tell you what I think. So here we are with the Seagull 1963, the Chinese watch with a Swiss sole, as it were. But then again, even the Russians, who famously did not buy the Venus movement from the Swiss, they went their own way, and they created the Amphibia family of watches. The Poliot 3133, which is the movement in their chronographs, the hand-wound movement in their chronographs, is based on the Valjoux 7733. So there's a little bit of Swiss in everyone, as it were, to a degree. But in the case of the Seagull 1963, the watch movement in it is based upon the Venus caliber 175, which the company sold because they wanted to make their own automatic chronograph movement, and it costs money to make a movement, and they thought, well, you know, the caliber 175 is highly respected. Venus has worked with companies as noble as Minerva, and they decided to sell it, and the Russians turned them down and created their own tech, and the Chinese said, well, hell no, we'll take it, and they used that movement to create the movement for their military watches. It was a government program called the Project 304, I believe. Yes, Project 304. And it created a movement for the military. See, because everybody needs accurate timing in order to conduct warfare in the modern world. You have to integrate forces, and nowadays they do it electronically, but you know, up until very modern times, it was very closely based on mechanical watches worn by officers. That's why, for example, like I said, this is an Amphibia Vostok, but the Sturmanskys, the higher-end Russian military watches, weren't even allowed to be sold. They were only given to graduates of the Russian service academies, because you want your officers and senior NCOs, non-commissioned officers, to have a good time reference, because timing is everything in combat operations. So this watch was created for the Chinese military based on the Venus movement, but it's its own movement. And Seagull, of course, has gone from there to make all kinds of movements, including advanced movements such as the tourbillon. In this case, this beautiful Chinese tourbillon. I have a video on this movement and this watch on the site, so please take a look at it. In fact, it's the #1 video in my archive, over 9,000 views on this, because it is an interesting piece and it's an interesting topic. In fact, like I said, I'm going to do a video on the topic of the value of Chinese watches right after I do this one. So let's zoom in and just, if you think about it, it's actually a very beautiful face. It's a very beautiful face for a watch intended for the military. I mean, if you think about it, it's got beautiful indices. The blue and the red really balance each other nicely. It's a 21 jewel movement. And let's see, talking about blue, now, okay, this, let's zoom back out. There we go. We were talking about blued hands. This has got blued hands. I don't know if they're chemically blued or heat blued. The blue on this Globemaster, this is true heat blued, and it's also black mirror polished. But then this is a $5,000 watch, and you can get that Chinese watch for a few hundred. So the fact that the blued hands on the 1963 may not be as sharp and high end as on the Omega doesn't detract from the fact that they are still quite nice, and they're very attractive hands on a well-balanced face. And the bicompax arrangement of the dial gives it a nice balance. So here, let's flip it over. Let me angle it a little bit, make sure we got some good light in there. Let me zoom back in. All right. Now, in this case, we can see there's the column wheel. It's not a cam-operated chronograph. It is a column wheel chronograph. So right off the bat, this is a watch that you can get for a few $100. That is a hand-wound column wheel chronograph with a display back, and that's one of the reasons that this is a go-to watch for a beginner or, frankly, even an advanced collector. I like to think of myself as a reasonably advanced collector, and actually I gave this one to the lady who comes in once in a while and cleans my house. I wanted to give her something nice and something that she can show if people ask her about watch collecting. And this is a great watch to give someone if you are giving someone a gift in this several $100 price range, $200-300. You're not going to find something as nice if they're into jewelry or watches. A piece of jewelry that you're going to get for a few $100 is not going to be as nice as this watch unless you really get a great deal on a piece of jewelry, in my humble opinion. But I mean, just look at this piece. It's got a swan neck regulator. It's got a column wheel. It's got a beautiful, beautiful finish for a watch in its price point. I mean, this is a comically lovely piece for the money that you pay for it. And as I said, you really can't get a watch in its price range with this level of, there are watches out now that have got almost gaudy levels of finishing, but this is a very tasteful level of finishing. The problem with a lot of Chinese watches is that they look like the poor man's idea of what a rich man's watch should look like, and they're overly ornate and they're full of garbage details. That's one of the reasons I like this watch and the Reef Tiger, which, for example, the Reef Tiger, because they are both Chinese watches, but they're not stereotypically Chinese. They're not overly gaudy. They're not flashy in a comical way. They're nice watches that present the complications they have in a nice fashion. So it's, like I said, let's almost forgot. I was going to compare it. Let's take a quick look. See, now, here is the Longines, right? Lovely finishing, and it's a column wheel chronograph. Oh, there we go. It's a column wheel chronograph, right? So here's a column wheel chronograph. It's a Valjoux 7750. Speak of the devil. Valjoux 7750s are everywhere. Well, this is a 7751, but it's a 7750 base movement, but Longines has it modified to a column wheel so that, obviously, because they're Longines, they can't just have a common cam operated in their master collection watches. So, but then again, this is a watch that costs several $1,000s as opposed to several $100s. So again, the Seagull 19, oops, sorry about that. The Seagull 1963 represents a fantastic value for the money for a watch of this caliber. So let's do some measurements. It's got, now see, for example, this is such a well-known and liked watch within its space that you can even get fakes of this watch, which is interesting. So fakes of a Chinese watch is always interesting to me. And this has got about a, 37.5 millimeter case size. It's got a thickness of 14, at 13.9, 14. It's a slightly domed crystal. It's actually, while we're talking, let me turn on the, I just recently got it, almost forgot I had it. I just recently got a diamond detector so that I could see if this is a good crystal or not. So I got my little device here. I'll let it warm up while we do the rest of the measurements and a wrist check. So let's put the strap back through. Let's zoom back out a little bit as well. There we go. And do a wrist check. Wristwatch check. I am wearing my Seiko spring drive. The first spring drive, that's why it's a Seiko. It's not a Grand Seiko. It's the SNR, I think it is, but it's the 003. They came out with three, the 001 in white, the 003 in blue, and the 005 in black. They were the first spring drive watches. I have a video on this on the archive as well. You should check it out. So, let's throw this on. I have an 18 centimeter wrist right now. Sometimes it goes bigger, but right now it's 18. And this fits very nicely on the wrist. I tend to prefer a slightly larger watch, I must say, but it has a very nice wrist presence for its size. It does stand a little high. Let me check real quick. The lug width is 18. So in this case, as you see, I have it on a blue and red NATO to make it a little more sporty and to highlight the blue and the red in the face. So you see it does have a very nice look to it. The lugs do bend down quite sharply, so it gives a very nice sit on the wrist, as it were. So yes, overall, a nice looking watch. So, back to the stand, zoom in a little bit, and let's close out before we turn the camera around and say goodbye. We've got the tester ready. So let's zoom out and try the tester. Oops. Okay, so let's give it a try with the tester. Yeah, it's a sapphire crystal. So you're really getting a good deal with this piece. You're getting sapphire crystal, hand wound, column wheel, swan neck regulated chronograph for only a few $100. You really can't beat it. It's a perfect example of good value to be found in an area where people don't expect it. But Chinese watches are getting better and better. One day they'll be looked upon as well as Japanese watches, and who knows, they may create their own niche. You never know what can happen in the coming years. So let's flip the camera around and call it a day. So that was the Seagull 1963. Seagull, of course, has gone on to make even more and different watch movements. Most notably, they make a tourbillon now. The fact that the Chinese make a good tourbillon shows you how far they have come from the days when they had to base a watch on a movement that they bought from the Swiss. Well, they probably copied the hell out of a bunch of different designs to get the watches that they have today. But the bottom line is Chinese does know how to do precision machining, and to discount their efforts in watchmaking is actually short-sighted. But what I'll do is, right after I turn off the camera, I'll do a quick piece on Chinese watches, whether they're worth it or not, and we'll take a look at the tourbillon, and we'll take a look at this again in a little bit different ways than I did just now, and compare it to a couple of the other pieces that I have here, and really show the value that you can get out of a Chinese watch, or frankly, non-Swiss piece. I might throw the Vostok in for the comparison as well. So thanks for taking the time to be with us today. I really appreciate it.